the year 2022, the landscape of Nigeria's electoral direction was changed forever. Welcome to the agenda. My name is Abiodun Famujura. What changed that landscape? What made it unique? What set the nation Nigeria on a trajectory that was going to make all future elections different from previous elections? We're going to be talking about the Electoral Act 2022, and I'm not alone. In the studio with me, joining me virtually, are two distinguished legal practitioners, Ekpa Stanley Ekpa. Welcome to the agenda. And also Shadrach Ayo. Interestingly, both legal practitioners have a long-standing history together. We are not going into that history now because we want to focus on the future. This is the agenda. Let's get into it. Gentlemen, welcome. Let's talk about the subject of the Electoral Act 2022. What are the key provisions in this new legislation that makes it different, remarkably so, from previous legislation? I start with you, Ekpa Stanley Ekpa.
Thank you very much for having me. Once again, my name is Ekpa Stanley Ekpa, and I want to thank this foundation for the great work you're doing. Number one, in raising the awareness and the consciousness of Nigerians on issues of electoral process, issues of citizens' involvement, and nation building at large.
Thank you.
Without this kind of campaign, definitely, it will be difficult for the electoral umpire INEC to do or to conduct elections with all Nigerians being involved as critical stakeholders. As you rightly said earlier on, last year, the Nigerian electoral space, witnessed a significant change from previous electoral acts. The primary law that guides INEC in the conduct of election in our country. Before now, there have been criticism and opinions that elections or votes rather don't count in elections. Basically because there are issues that has to do with rigging, vote buying, and all that.
Also known as electoral fraud or malpractices.
Generally, electoral fraud and malpractice, yes. But when you break it, the most common one that Nigerians can easily identify with are the fact that rigging, which is at the core of electoral fraud, is a core issue that disenfranchises them from their votes, counting in our elections. But again, the amendment to the Electoral Act has brought a lot of changes. That the Act itself has been used to test in different elections, including election in the states, including election in Anambra State and in Osun State. So these three recent elections have been adjudged to be a bit free, fair, and credible.
And the votes counted. The votes of the citizens counted to a certain degree.
Yes, to a certain degree, particularly in the election in Ekiti, Anambra, and Osun states.
Okay,
the three elections.
Ekpa Stanley, before you proceed, the subject matter of the Osun election is sub judice.
That's
the Election Petition Tribunal has given its judgment. It's gone on appeal. We cannot get into that because it is sub judice. It is before a competent court of jurisdiction. However, I need you to give me one key provision in the new Electoral Act 2022 that you can say is a game changer. Because Shadrach Ayo, our legal colleague, is also going to tell me what is his own perception of the game changer. For those who are watching us all over the world on various social media platforms, including terrestrial TV, we need to let them know that this is the game changer. When this act came into existence, this key provision made the difference. Shadrach will also make his own contribution because we cannot, the subject of Osun State, it is sub judice and we don't want to go into it. It is a delicate and thorny issue right now. But I need a key provision from you, Ekpa Stanley Ekpa.
Thank you.
Give me one key provision, not two, just one. So that those who are at home that do not know will be able to say correct. So this is the game changer for everybody.
Thank you very much. I was laying that background so that I'll come to the fact that, given the fact that people were not confident that their votes would count, the specific provisions of the Electoral Act 2022, particularly on Section 50 of that Act, which actually talks about the electronic transmission of results, gave INEC a wide spectrum of powers to determine whether they're going to have electronic or manual means of transmission of results, which is a very, 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 very significant shift from where we were. And as you know, that's what gave them the power also to introduce beavers, which greatly has improved both the structure, the form, and then the result of our electoral outcomes in those I made mention of the electoral process. I was very mindful of the fact that, of course, I was getting to that point that we can't discuss the outcome of the tribunal of Washington State, given the fact that the candidate has also is also processing the appeal to the Court of Appeal. But again, I was making reference to the fact that it's as a result of the impact of the new Electoral Act that we've been able to witness the greatly or generally adjudged fair, free, and credible elections in those three states I made mention of. So Section 50 of the Electoral Act,
Section 50
of 2020, as amended, is a game changer, really.
It's a game changer. The transmission of results, moving away from the manual transmission. Shedrack Ayo. Thank you so much, Ekpa Stanley Ekpa. Shedrack Ayo, I need to ask you that question. What is the key provision for you in this Electoral Act 2022 that you will be able to tell everybody watching us wherever they are, that for you personally, as a citizen, first and foremost, before being a legal practitioner, this is the game changer? Shedrack Ayo? But while Shedrack Ayo is joining us, I need to ask you a question. Ekpa Stanley Ekpa.
Yes.
With this new key provision,
yes,
do you believe firmly that the Electoral Act 2022 will significantly impact the presidential and governorship election this year, 2023?
It's my well-considered opinion and view that it will. It will.
Why? Why do you believe so? Why do you believe this Electoral Act will completely upturn the status quo as it has always been? Beyond Section 50?
Yeah, it may not entirely. It may not entirely, because we just introduced the law last year. So INEC is still going to grasp with a lot of challenges. Even with technological challenges, particularly at the most part of the ungoverned spaces in the country, places where we don't have internet penetration, places where, though the introduction of beavers is to the fact that if you upload, when you get to a place where there's internet, it can always, the messages can always deliver. But I think greatly it's going to impact on this current election. And you can see from the language of the politicians. Politicians some of them are mostly scared of the outcome of the election. And that is why you see that the introduction of the new Naira notes, I know we most likely get to the point, such points, as the conversation progresses. But again, it's important to understand the fact that you can read from the body language of the communications of different political parties that they are the point which they are banking on is to convert that the significant impact that provision is going to have on this current election is also being affected. So most of them are banking on the fact that the new act has given the power of electing the kind of leaders people want back to the people itself. And they are scared. So the only option that actually, to me, I feel that they have is vote buying. But again, if you also read down after Section 50, you realize the fact that the introduction of the electronic means by Section 50 is most likely going to have significant impacts on the pattern of vote buying too, because that's where the overvoting comes in. Section 51 of the Act talks about overvoting, right? So when, for instance, you buy more votes or you have more votes, by any means,
than the number of registered voters.
Yes, definitely. By the time INEC is imputing the number of accreditation for voters in that particular polling unit, it's going to affect the outcome of the number of votes you have. And as rightly agreed that we're not going to speak.
Ekpa Stanley, all that thought, because Shedrack Ayo, I'm glad we have you. The key provision in the Electoral Act 2022, Ekpa Stanley Ekpa has said that Section 50 is a strategic provision. He followed it up with Section 51 that deals with the subject of overvoting or voting in excess. What is your position? What is your key provision concerning the Electoral Act 2022 that is a game changer, that has upturned the position? Because Ekpa Stanley is having a great time telling us that the politicians are in trouble. according to him. You know, he's saying that the politicians they are not where they used to be. They're not comfortable. Shadrach, what do you say?
Yes, in sincerity, I agree totally with Ekpa Stanley's submission on the election transmission of results. However, the process of election itself starts from nomination of candidates. The Electoral Act, over time, there have been issues as regards the candidates of a political party, how those candidates emerge. Electoral Act has left it for political party to determine how they nominate their candidates, but the political party has abused that privilege. So the National Assembly now have to intervene through the Electoral Act, and they introduce Section 84. And
Section 84. Tell us about Section 84.
Yes, Section 84, particularly Section 8 of that Section 84, now made it compulsory, mandatory for political parties to elect, if they want to elect their candidates by indirect means, indirect primary election, that the delegate that will participate in the voting of that candidate must be elected through a democratic means. And such process shall be outlined in the constitution of the political party and their guidelines. What this has addressed is that there have been issue of what the political party calls statutory delegate. The definition of statutory delegates are party members who have held public offices in the past from 1999 to date. If you have been House of Assembly, House of Representative, local government chairman, councillor, governor, you are a statutory delegate. And that has limited the chance of electing political party to some set of persons over the years. And this is not go well with the electorate. This is not go well with the people.
So the new Electoral Act, Mr. Ayo,
the new Electoral Act now states clearly that anybody who must be a delegate must go and contest to be a delegate, and it must come through a democratic process. So by this singular provision, it has shut out the statutory delegates. So a very big question was answered, and it has added credibility to how a political party conduct their primary elections.
So are you saying, sorry, Mr. Ayo, are you saying that the Electoral Act 2020 has democratized the system by which candidates emerge from the political parties themselves?
Exactly.
Before they appear for election themselves?
Yes. It has sanitized that process.
That means that internal democracy, courtesy of the Electoral Act, has been deepened.
In the political party.
That is a brilliant one. Now, I need to bring something up, gentlemen, to both of you. There is an observation concerning the Electoral Act that if you contest for a position, let us use the presidential election, right? If you contest the primaries of a political party as a presidential candidate and you lose, you cannot go to another political party to emerge as a presidential flag bearer. The Electoral Act 2022 has dealt with that. I need to hear Ekpa Stanley, your contribution on that, and then we'll come to Shadrach Ayo.
Okay.
I do not want to believe that the provisions of the Electoral Act that talks about multiple nomination, what the Act calls not multiple or double nomination rather, and then also the Supreme Court affirmed that double nomination is to be fair that if you've been duly nominated by a political party, and then there enter a crisis in that political party, in a given election, the law is saying that you cannot jump to another political party to hold another nomination, which will make it a double nomination of two political parties. However, if in the primaries, which as my late brother Shadrach has pointed out, if in the primaries or in the process of the primaries, you've discovered that you are going to be disadvantaged by different factors and variables in that such elections, the law allows you, at liberty, of course, to go to defect to another political party that you think your political interests and aspirations can be easily actualized. And so the idea of double nomination only applies to when you hold a subsisting nomination of two political parties, and not when you've not been duly nominated by a political party and you defer to another political party. That is when you would be affected by that doctrine.
Mr. Ekpa Stanley Ekpa, are you saying that if a presidential aspirant
Yes
runs in the primaries to become the presidential flag bearer for a political party, if he loses, can he move to another party and emerge as their presidential flag bearer?
In my considered opinion, I think if you lose this in an election, you don't hold the nomination of that party as the candidate of that party. That is my considered opinion of that.
That is
provision.
your considered opinion.
Yes.
Shadrach Ekpa Stanley, let me take Shadrach on that subject matter, because I see Shadrach is smiling, and that smile speaks of dissent. Shadrach, because in the recent presidential primaries, it was observed that an aspirant perceived that he was not going to get the nomination of a party that he belonged to. He moved strategically to another party and emerged as their presidential flag bearer. And it was said that if he had contested, he would have been prevented by the new Electoral Act. So because we're engaging and we're informing our audience so that they will know for future purposes that this is the position. Yes, Shadrach Ayo.
Yes, the position of the law is what Stanley has stated. Process of nomination ends at the stage where the political party submits your name to INEC as a candidate. If your name is not submitted to INEC as a candidate of a political party, you have not been nominated. So, in the authority of UOSU against INEC, where Supreme Court nullified the candidature of Uche Uwosu of Action Alliance on the basis that he was firstly nominated by APC before he went to seek nomination of
Action Alliance.
On that authority, that was what gave birth to this provision. And in that case, sir, the APC had earlier forwarded the name of Uche Uwosu to INEC as their candidate. They had documentary evidence to that effect. So because of what they perceived that, okay, this may not work, they now decided to go and take nomination of Action Alliance where it will not be contested, because they know that their nomination in APC will be contested by other aspirants. But Supreme Court heard that Uche Uwosu was nominated by APC with the evidence that was before the court. And AA also nominated him. They now voided the candidacy of Uche Uwosu. Yes. So in the light of that, he was duly nominated by those political party in that respect, because the nomination itself is a process, and that process starts by picking nomination and expression of interest form, contesting the primary election, and the process terminates at the stage where the political party will take your name through the required form to INEC and say, this is our candidate. That is where the nomination terminates. At that stage, you are now prevented by the law, electoral acts, that not to go and take nomination of other political party. But if you lose in primary election, you can resign from that political party and join that political party. If they give you waiver, if they give you waiver, they allow you to contest the primary election, you emerge, you can be nominated you can be nominated in such party. At the political party where you lost election, you were never nominated.
Correct.
That is.
I need to ask both of you a question before we go on a short break. What key provisions of the Electoral Act addresses the subject of voter intimidation, violence, and intimidation during elections? What are the key provisions that the Electoral Act 2022 guarantees, protects the citizens from the issue of the subject of voter intimidation, violence, and intimidation during elections? Do you have the key provisions that makes that impossible for political parties or political gladiators to carry out voter intimidation, violence, and intimidation during the sustenance of an electoral process. Ekpa, Stanley Ekpa, would you like to go first on this subject matter? Because we're looking at the Electoral Act and we want to see this wonderful document, what it is capable of. In the past, in the course of election, we have seen situations where violence, voter intimidation, ballot snatching and stuffing, and intimidation suppression during the pendency of an election. Electoral Act 2022, we acknowledge it's a game changer. Has it dealt with this subject matter? You want Shadrach Ayo to go first?
Okay.
Yeah, Shadrach, please go ahead, Mr. Shadrach.
Yes, the Electoral Act is this section in this Electoral Act 2022 in section 121.
Section 121.
121.
Okay.
Yes. It criminalizes every form of bribing, conspiracy. Because if we look very well, the basis upon which people get intimidated is through financial inducement. That is where they start. That's where they start, and it addresses issue of bribing, and it criminalizes it. It even plays a conviction to a maximum of 500,000 naira or imprisonment for a term of 12 months if anybody gets involved. And it also proceeded to criminalize any attempt to compromise INEC staff who are on election duty. This and other way by the Article 18 of the
Electoral
regulations Article 18 of regulations and guidelines for the conduct of elections 2022.
Okay.
This is a regulation that the Electoral Act empowers INEC to make in order to achieve a free, fair, and credible election. That article also made it mandatory the use of the bimodal voters accreditation system, BVAS.
The BVAS.
Yes. So since this article in this INEC regulation and guidelines has made it mandatory for any voter that must vote in an election to make use of this BVAS, it has automatically addressed cases of ballot snatching, ballot stuffing, and the rest of other intimidation. Yes, because
it has criminalized
the moment you tend to bribe, the law has sanctioned it that you go to 12 months imprisonment, or you pay a fine of 500,000 naira, or both. When you try to come and disrupt the process through thuggery and the rest of others, the law has also sanctioned that you must use BVAS. If you do election through any other ways without using BVAS, such election will be declared null and void.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shadrach Ayo. Ekpa Stanley Ekpa, before you make your contribution, I want to say this. To those watching us at home, wherever you are, this is still the agenda. We're looking at the subject of the Electoral Act 2022, the game changer in the elections that will be taking place this year and subsequent elections. Whatever you do, do not touch that dial. We shall be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to the agenda. We are talking about the Electoral Act 2022, the game changer. I have been engaging in an intellectual discourse that is very, very profound with two legal practitioners, Shadrach Ayo and Ekpa Stanley Ekpa. Before we went on the short break, we were talking about the provisions of the Electoral Act and the rules and regulations that deals with voter intimidation, voter suppression, and violence during election. Ekpa Stanley Ekpa, I need to ask you another question, although different from that which Shadrach Ayo has answered. How has the Electoral Act made allowances for the participation of women, youth, and other marginalized groups in the political process? What has this Electoral Act 2022, what has it done differently with regards to women, youth, and other marginalized groups in the political process? Please be aware that we are contrasting the Electoral Act 2022 with previous legislation in the same field of engagement. Ekpa, Stanley Ekpa.
Thank you very much. You realize the fact that one of the key components of this, the amendment to the old version of the Electoral Act, which came in effect last year, is that it gives room for the political parties to have an extended period of time to campaign, just beyond the 90 days that the old version of the law or the act, provide. In this case, and they're also influenced by other variables too. The persons with special interests, I would call them special interests. But I also belong to such category as a young person. Now have more chance to assess their leaders, the credentials of competence and character that they are coming to, to seek their votes from. If you have candidates canvassing for votes 3 months, 4 months before, or 5 months before the election, it gives room for a wider, engagement with the target electorate, right? You give room for the candidate to reach out to all the relevant stakeholders, as you rightly mentioned, young persons, women, people with disability, and all that. The major default of the former Electoral Act or legal framework is that campaigning within 90 days, it's just like you saying you want to run a crash program for a program that you should have done for 5 years within just 1 month or 2 months. And that is a major challenge. But whether that would have a significant impact on this election, I can't say for sure. For so many reasons. Number one, if you look at the campaign trends, democracy is about conversation, public conversation, debates on issues, the core issues. The question then is, if you now want to engage young persons, women, people with disabilities, and all that, whether their interest is being taken care of in this current election, it then means that candidates would discuss the manifestos, which is the primary document of contract with the people. But as it stands, even though we've had sufficient time before this time that we're just about 20 days to the election, most of the political parties have not done that. Holding rallies in major cities of the states, or the capital of the states, is not enough to people who cannot read and write or comprehend the manifestos in the English language and the dancing steps that we hold on such stages. So notwithstanding the fact that the new Electoral Act has given more or an ample time for the political parties and the candidates to canvass and reach out to the voters, there are also a whole lot of limitations in terms of the political parties' engagement itself. So I think that what is new that this game-changing piece of legislation on the electoral process has brought is that it has given more time for the political parties and the candidates to engage more with Nigerians who they are seeking that they should employ them into the various offices to which they are running from.
Ekpa, Stanley,
I would also love to add to what
I need to say something because we're rounding off in some few minutes. I understand perfectly that we're unable to thoroughly exhaust the conversation with regards to the Electoral Act, but we need to say something. And in a few seconds, I would like you to respond to this, and so would Shadrach Ayo do the same. You mentioned the word debate. It appears that the Electoral Act 2022 has not made debate compulsory. That, in my own opinion, my personal opinion, might be a fundamental flaw. What do you say, Ekpa, Stanley Ekpa, and Shadrach Ayo? Because you mentioned the word, the social contract. How do I employ someone who does not make himself available to be asked questions about his suitability for the position he's applying for? Ekpa, Stanley Ekpa, and then we take Shadrach Ayo on the subject of debate in the Electoral Act 2022. A flaw that needs to be dealt with.
Thank you very much. This is a very fundamental question, actually. Very, very key. It's key because, as you rightly said, if you're employing someone, you should be able to judge the person's credentials that is presenting to you as his basis for you to employ the person as being qualified for that job. However, the lacuna we have currently in the Electoral Act is there because there is a question as to who conducts the debates, if it is made mandatory within the legal framework. The INEC, who is burdened with a lot of responsibilities and work before the election, or is it the other stakeholders within the media and civic organizations.
Civic society.
So there are a lot civil society rather. Thank you. There are lots of issues that need to be resolved, and it has to come with a whole lot of legislative, creative input and solutions to that particular lacuna. If you burden INEC with the powers or the responsibility of conducting debates for candidates, it's going to be cumbersome on them, because they're saying that at the states, at the senatorial districts, at the federal constituencies, at the state constituencies, because those are the elections captured within the electoral act, INEC have to conduct election. So at the moment, I think it's not yet a lacuna. We can only, because it's not everything that are the challenges we face at the moment can be captured within such legal framework. However, we can begin to implore and also advocate for how other stakeholders, whether multiple stakeholders within that space, can begin to also take the responsibility of doing that one.
All right. Thank you very much, Ekpa Stanley. Shedrack Ayo, your last word on the subject of debate before we leave.
Yes, on issue of debate for election, we have a consensus among us from the civil society, the activist community, and the legal profession. That if anybody must seek election, such person must be ready to submit himself for scrutiny, proper scrutiny by the electorate. Of course, if we are doing this too, certain factors and conditions need to be put into due consideration, and it must be implemented. Well, the organizations organizing debates for political party candidates in Nigeria, they are not doing well, to the best of my knowledge.
They're not doing well.
They are not doing well. Because we see that the anchors of some debates, they have open alliance with some political parties. If they invite candidates from other political parties who are not members of their political party to debate, those people will have reservations about the conduct of such debates. So we have seen in the past that some of the anchors will be on the ballot as candidates of political parties, and they are now anchoring debates. They are inviting other political parties. Of course, before you attend any debates, before you attend any competition, you will be able to. You should be able to. Some conditions have to be put into place that you are going to get a fair grant to operate. That you will not be cheated. You will not be subjected to unsavory treatment.
Yes, you will not be humiliated in the course
of your
engagement.
So your security too have to be guaranteed. And security in this instance is security for you to also hear your opinion without intimidation, without fear.
And without being maligned. Shedrack Ayo,
yes.
I know you want to say more, but the scenario is this. The Electoral Act conversation continues. Wherever you are joining us in the world, this has been the agenda. The production does not end here. The conversation continues. I have been with wonderful gentlemen, Shedrack Ayo and Ekpa Stanley Ekpa, concerning the Electoral Act 2022. Whatever you do, understand this. Your vote counts. Your vote is important. Know the law, do the law, and ensure that this election here, you make a difference in your own space. My name remains Abiodun Famujura. I am a Nigerian, and I pledge to Nigeria, my country, to be faithful, loyal, and honest. Connect with us on our social media handles displayed on the screen. Till I come your way next time, stay positive. Bye for now.